Welcome back to A Better Way of Earning podcast. On our welcome episode, I introduced a concept that we're going to explore throughout this season. The idea that many of us have been following what we call the public playbook. The traditional advice we've heard about work, money, and success. Go to school, get good grades, find a good job, work hard, save money, retire. While there's nothing inherently wrong with those ideas, many people are discovering that following those steps alone doesn't always lead to financial freedom. Today, we're talking about a question that makes some people very uncomfortable. Why do so many intelligent, hardworking people still struggle financially? This episode isn't about judgment. It's about understanding the difference between earning money and building wealth, because they, my friends, are not the same thing. Stay tuned to the end of the podcast so that you can hear a few of the hidden barriers to success. I call them our trademark success blockers. One of the biggest misconceptions in our society is that income automatically creates wealth. We assume that people with larger salaries must be financially secure. But we've seen examples that prove otherwise. Professional athletes that have gone bankrupt, lottery winners who have lost their fortunes within a short amount of time. High income earners often live paycheck to paycheck. At the same time, there are school teachers, tradespeople, and small business owners quietly building wealth over decades. Why? Because wealth isn't determined by what comes in, it is determined by what stays and what grows. A person earning $50,000 annually who consistently invests and manages their money well can eventually outperform someone earning $150,000 who spends everything that they make. Income creates opportunity. Habits create wealth. The lifestyle trap. Let's talk about something called lifestyle inflation. This happens when every increase in income immediately becomes an increase in expenses. You get a raise, you upgrade the apartment. You buy a new car, you increase your spending. Then comes another raise, and the cycle repeats. The problem isn't enjoying your success. The problem is increasing your expenses faster than you're increasing your assets. Many people look wealthy. Let me say that again. Many people look wealthy. Few people are actually building wealth. There's a huge difference. One purchases things, the other purchases options. The goal isn't to impress people. Your goal should be to create freedom. Freedom to choose where you work, freedom to leave unhealthy environments, freedom to start a business, freedom to take care of yourself and or your family. And that wealth ultimately provides everything you can imagine. Let's talk about what young adults and some older adults need to know about money. If you're in your late teens or early 20s, I want you to hear this clearly. You do not need to have everything figured out. You do not need to become a millionaire by 30. You do not need a six-figure salary next year. What you do need are good habits. Learn how to budget. Learn how credit actually works, not what you see on TikTok or social media platforms, but really understand how credit really works, how you can utilize credit and leverage credit, but also how credit is determined. throughout banks, throughout employment, throughout credit cards, or whatever you're applying for. You have to understand what they're looking for and what does not count. You need to understand interest. That means interest in your bank accounts, interest that you're earning through your savings, your 401k. How does interest actually increase your money? Avoiding unnecessary debt. Now, I want to clarify. There's a lot of people that assume that if I pay for everything with cash, then I will avoid unnecessary debt and I'll be okay. But what I want you to recognize is that we live in a credit worthy environment. That's the ecosystem that we live in. You are judged by your ability to grow and increase your wealth by your credit worthiness. So if you're only using cash as transactional or how you're paying everything or buying everything, you're never actually building your credit worthiness. That will negatively impact your ability to expand past your cash. If you are young, please, please, please create an emergency fund. And this fund doesn't have to be billions of dollars. This needs to be a a a space or a number. You create your own number of what that emergency fund looks like so that when something arises that's unplanned, you're not scrambling to try to figure out how to survive that setback. Most importantly, learn how to begin investing early. Not because you have a lot of money, because time is your greatest asset. A small amount invested consistently over 20 years often beats large amounts of investing later in life. The earlier that you start, the more options you will create for your future self. But your 20s are often more valuable as a learning decade than a earning decade. And those of us who take moments to look back, my pastor called it my stupid money. If we look back on some of the decisions and some of the things that we did in our 20s, especially things that we did that gave us instant gratification, we look back on that as we age, as we grow, as we now look at our financial stability and realize that that moment of instant gratification might have placed us in a hole of decades of financial struggles. So I'm only telling you this because not because I'm trying to change your lifestyle, I'm trying to make you a hermit at home, but I'm just trying to give you a little bit of wisdom to let you know that if you think about some things a little bit different, doesn't have to be a huge shift in how you handle your life. But if you make small changes now while you're young, then it will pay off later as you begin to experience more life. The experiences, relationships, and skills that you build during this period can dramatically increase your earning potential later. I want you to start thinking in the long term, not just in the paycheck. My father told me something when I was in high school that really stuck with me. He said, Clyde, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, I was the son my father never had, so my name was Clyde. It's still Clyde. He still calls me that. His family still calls me that. I love it. So, anyway, my father sat me down and said, Clyde, you have one or two choices. He said, you can play while you're young and work hard for the rest of your life, or you can work hard now while you're young and you have the energy of it, and you can enjoy the fruits of that labor for the rest of your life. And that stuck with me because the option was I can hang out, spend all my money, not save anything, look good, buy expensive things, et cetera, and feel good right now. But then what struck me, or what really stuck with me, was he said I'd have to work hard for the rest of my life. I didn't want to do that. So I sacrificed a lot of things while I was younger just so that I can build up a lot of the financial acumen and the business acumen that I have today. And I'm now able to enjoy life in manners that I never imagined that would be possible for me. Now, let's talk about the wealth as a mindset. Before wealth becomes a bank account, it must become a mindset. People who build wealth tend to think differently. They ask, how do I create value? How can I solve problems? How can I learn new skills? And how can I make money work for me? Instead of focusing only on what they're earning today, they focus on what they are building for tomorrow. This isn't about greed, it's about stewardship. It's about creating stability, opportunity, and choices for your life that others may or may not have the opportunity to do. And that's something that every human being deserves to experience. I recently took a trip up to Ohio, and my Lyft driver, a young lady, was just talking about her last ride, and we were just chatting. But what she eventually moved into a conversation of was talking about her struggles. The reason why she was doing Lyft was to counter support her income and to take care of her family and her kids. And so, one of the things that she said that really is applicable to this episode was, I don't understand why my entire life has to be a struggle. Why, no matter what I do, how hard I work, how many jobs I have, I still always find myself in the hole. And so I want to pass that sentence or that sentiment on to you, where you need to take a moment and ask yourself, do you want to spend all of your life in the hole? Each one of us has our own ability to have our own perspective of what in the hole means. But what she was trying to say was, every day she's missing opportunities with her children or missing opportunities that she's watching other people travel and do other things, but she's not allowed to do that because every single day she has to focus in on how to pay the minimum and how to take care of her bills and keep the lights on. And so figure out what your perspective is. Yes, it's cool right now to have the Gucci bag and all the name brand things and all of the shoes and clothes and be the influencer and get people to give likes on social media. But as in everything in life, there's a cycle. So what you have bought today that is flashy, that has a value to it, it's like a used car tomorrow, doesn't have to hold the same value. So if you've created an ecosystem or a system for yourself that you always have to continue to spend more and more and more to get that dopamine effect of people liking or people looking up to you or people thinking that you look fly and that you look good and et cetera, um, eventually that mountain will begin to crumble. So figure out how you want to navigate, not just today, but the rest of your life. Do you want to have now there's going to be a teetering point or a point in life that you can go and buy all those things and afford all those things and live life, live great, look good. But is this the right time to invest in all that? Speaking of investing, research your brands. Find the brands that actually appreciate if you're going to spend that kind of money. But if this is going to be something that you spend 5, 10, 20, $50,000 on a handbag, that in a year, if you want to sell that, trade that, consign that, you're only going to get pennies on that. Is that a great investment? Just a note for the personal corner of Dr. Michelle. Now, don't send emails and pictures of your purses and shoes and everything for evaluation evaluation purpose. That's not what the sentence is about. I want you to be smart about what you are investing in now, because what you do today is going to directly impact what your future looks like. Let's talk a little bit about why money should not be your only career decision. This may surprise some of you, but the highest paying job isn't always the best opportunity. And for those of us who have chased promotions and salary increases and bonuses throughout our career, we could be the first one to attest to there are times that we did that we missed out on life. When evaluating opportunities, always ask yourself, is this the schedule, the life, the pace that's going to make me happy? There are some people that chasing that money and working all day or committing themselves into a career will make them happy, and that's okay. But there are some that gets into this rat race and quickly finds out that this is not all that it was sold to me to be, because you're now missing out on hanging out with your friends or exploring other things or learning more, increasing your skills, or spending time with family or traveling, because you've committed yourself into an opportunity that consumes majority of your life and time. And although you've gotten that great check and you got the great bonuses, you don't have a life to be able to enjoy it. You're just grinding it out. So evaluate what really are you looking for. Money is great. Having a great salary, it gives you security in some opportunities. It makes you feel better. We are led to believe that the more money that we make, the more opportunities that are afforded to us. But if you or the requirement to gain that check is so time consuming and so emotionally, physically draining in order for you to sustain that pace, what opportunities are you actually gaining? Or is it increasing your skills? Are you getting access to new mentors or ways for you to balance out the chase for money and the excitement, exploration, and the relaxation of life? Is it opening new doors for you for better opportunities? Or will you always be on this hamster wheel of trying to get more money? But the most important question that you need to ask yourself is, will I grow from here? There's 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 something that most people don't really talk about, especially people that are in these higher income brackets. They were led to believe that, okay, once I make more money, then I'm going to be more happy and I'm be more secure. But what a lot of people in those higher income brackets don't readily discuss with people is the value proposition that happens the more money that you make. Sometimes in some companies, in some environments, the more money that you make, the more that the company believes that they have ownership over every aspect of your life. That means they control your schedule, they control your time. There is no work life balance. The company feels like that once they pay you a certain level of salary, that your time, your emotions, your growth belongs solely to them. That is not a healthy situation to be in. That eventually gets you to the point that you start asking yourself, is this check worth this? Is it worth my health? Is it worth the fact that I never have time off? If you've worked long enough, back in the day, we all used to have like guaranteed vacation time. You'd sign your contract for your job and it would come with 2 weeks, and every year you'd add another week or whatever. But companies began to realize how much that was costing them from a corporate standpoint. So now they created this PTO where you earn the more hours that you're there, you earn this PTO time. Either way, vacation, PTO, time off, flex time, whatever you want to call it, or whatever your company titles it, if you get into a certain level of income bracket and you aren't able to take any of that time off, and again, I'm gonna date myself because back in the day, whatever time that you didn't use, because some of us was real smart because we would bank that PTO or bank that vacation because every year you had the choice of it could roll over or they pay it out. And so if you were in a financial struggle or whatever, you look forward to that payout. Or if you knew that, next year you're going to have a great cruise coming up or whatever, you would bank that time so you'd have more time off. Once again, in the corporate world, not only do they think from the perspective of what's going to benefit the company, but hey, these corporate officials and leaders and owners, they're on social media just like you are. So the more that people talk about how to really maximize or get over on the job, the more they go back to the drawing board and figure out how to not make it so that you can do that. Um, and I'm not saying every company is like that, but every company is built on a profit margin platform. There's not a company out there that sits, no matter how family friendly they are and how much they care about the people that work for them, they got into business to make money. And as the economy fails, as things become more expensive, as it becomes more costly to run these corporations. In one of these episodes, we're going to talk about scaling and growing your own company and the things that you have to consider. So, as companies scale and grow, that's more money that they have to pay in salaries and bonuses and taxes and operations and execution of their company product or service. The more they have to pay, the less that they are going to offer as free money. And vacation time, PTO, benefits is technically free money. It's an expense that the company incurs um, to help you to enjoy your job better. Well, guess what's going to decrease as expenses increase on a company? That free money. So companies started learning how to get around benefits and how to, even with your health benefits, they've now even recognized that there is a high um, pay for benefits. That means that you are paying a lot of money for you to utilize the health plan that the company offers. Why do they do that? Because it saves them money. So they shift some of that money or that expense over to you, the employee. I'm talking about this because, again, the higher that your income bracket goes or is within a company, you may start to see that throughout time of your tenure with that company, the benefits have changed. The ability to take time off has changed. Your flexibility, your free time is becoming shorter. Why is this important in this episode? Because again, not all money is good money. If you find yourself in a career or in a company that you're boxed in, that you're making the 7 and the 8 figures and that looks good going in the bank account, but your health is failing, your marriage, your relationships are falling apart, you have no time or you're not able to take any time. Yes, will they give you that time off? Absolutely. But in the day and age of email and cell phones and messaging and chats, that doesn't necessarily mean that they leave you alone during your time off. And some companies won't let you shut them out. That's a part of your contract. But anyway, sorry, I went off on a tangent. But I really want, again, I'm having this conversation because if you've never been in that position, the more you know about what happens if you get to that level or when you get to that level, the better prepared that you are. This happens often where we find ourselves in positions of, I didn't know. I didn't know that this is what this looks like. I didn't know that I was going to be working more on salary than I ever did as an hourly person. I didn't know that in order for me to get that bonus that I was easily able to get 2 years ago, 5 years ago, now the rules have changed for me to bonus with the company. And the measurable or the line to acquire your bonus is so far out of your reach that now getting bonus is almost unrealistic. But that bonus is tied into the contract of how much money they promised you to make. You see the cycle here? Okay, here we go. As promised in the beginning of the podcast, let's talk about some of our trademark success blockers that we've found that are hidden barriers to success for smart people. Number one, analysis paralysis. This is a circumstance where smart people, our intellect tends to get in our own way. Analysis paralysis is when highly intelligent people often seek multiple possibilities, outcomes, and risk. Instead of making a decision, they continue researching, planning, and preparing. The result of that is often missed opportunities, delayed growth, and lack of momentum. The key lesson that I want you to, if this applies to you, the key lesson that I want you to remember is progress beats perfection. Number two, the hidden barrier for smart people that causes them to limit their success is scarcity thinking. Scarcity thinking is where you feel like that there isn't enough. This is not the right time. I need to build up more money. I need to build up more foundation. I need to build up more education. Scarcity thinking causes smart people to compete unnecessarily, hoard information, fear of sharing opportunities, and definitely a fear of making short term decisions. And so, how to reframe this scarcity thinking is to understand that your success is not a limited resource. I know for me, this was one of my biggest ones because I felt like that in life, you only have one shot at success, right? This is what we hear, this is what we feel. We never hear about people talking about multiple or unfolds of levels of success happening at 20s and 30s and 40s. No, we hear about the big one, right? And so oftentimes through that analysis paralysis, we tend to feel like that we only have one shot at our level of success. And if we move too quick, or if we get it wrong, or if we try too early, then we're going to miss that one opportunity. So I want you to remember success is not a limited resource. If you think back early on the podcast, I talked about the fact that I was so focused in on what other people's definition of success was, I was unable to recognize all of my stages of success throughout my career, throughout my business development, throughout just life, because I was looking for the one big moment. Okay. And the third and usually the most hindering hidden success blocker for smart people is the fear of success. And I talk about this a lot. I assume that people are very aware that this is one of the most common barriers for people in general, but especially for highly intelligent people. It's not the fact that we fear failing. We understand the logic of failing. We understand the barriers or the steps to prevent failure. But oftentimes, internally, we don't openly discuss it, but internally, our biggest fear is what if it does work? We want to have a plan. We need to make sure that everything is right before we achieve that success. Back to that analysis paralysis. Am I in the right position? Am I prepared for this? Am I going to be able to sustain this? That fear of success. What actually happens after this actually work? It creates success, creates visibility. Now I'm no longer just the person that people know. Now I have status and I'm prominent. And for a lot of intelligent people, we really fear what that really does and how that impacts our life in the future and the people around us. It increases our responsibility now. If you're already a overthinker and a planner, now you are an information overload of how you show up. You need to make sure that you are prepared for this level of responsibility. You have expectations, not just for yourself, but for the people around you. That now that you've achieved this level of success, the expectations of everyone stepping into that level of perfection that tends to terrorize us basically, where is but they don't really know me. They like me, they appreciate me, they give me compliments. um I've noticed, especially with highly intelligent people, the more attention, the more promotion, the more that people begin to give you accolades and appreciate who you are, it creates an internal level of stress and fear. And then the biggest part of that fear of success is change. I like my life the way that it is. Yes, I want to have success. Yes, I want to live a comfortable life. Yes, I understand the logic of why this is a great goal, but I'm good where I am. So, how can I do this and still remain the same? I don't want people to think that I've changed. I don't want to lose the people around me. I don't want the people that grew up with me to feel like that now I'm a different person. So, we don't know how to process this. Many people unconsciously sabotage opportunities because success requires them to become someone new. The key lesson for the fear of success is you must be willing to outgrow the old version of yourself. That doesn't mean that you're an imposter. That doesn't mean that you forget where you come from. It doesn't mean that you've left the people from your old ecosystem. It just means that you are walking in a pathway of the success that was designed for you. Throughout season 2, one of my goals is to make sure that you have something very tangible and relatable to hold on to and to work on. So, we're going to talk more about the public playbook, and we're going to talk more about these success blockers that pertains to certain folks to help them overcome some of the barriers that hold us back from achieving our level and desired level of success throughout life. Whatever that looks like and whatever that picture looks like, there's still some common blockers that through research I've found. And it's not just about you or your background or where you grew up at or the limited amount of money or the excessive amount of money that you've had access to. It is a part of a neurological process. This is how our brain protects us. We have to remember that no matter how much technology grows, how much access to information, how generations change, our body is still the biological makeup that it was hundreds of thousands of years ago. So, in order for you to break through some of these blockers and barriers, you have to understand the actual physical makeup of your body and how your brain processes information. Information for your brain isn't translated for today's time, it is processed through what it was programmed and how it was programmed to process fear, attack, stress. And so, we'll talk more about that throughout this season. Stay tuned. In closing, today's message is very simple. Being smart in today's time is no longer enough. Working hard is not enough. Making more money is not the solution to wealth. Financial success comes from understanding how money works and making intentional decisions over time. The good news is you don't have to be perfect at it. You just need to start. And I know that earlier I addressed my 20-year-olds and I was talking about how to get this started in your early 20s because that is important. But I also want to talk to my more seasoned people. It's never too late to begin to make smarter choices. And for all my influencers out there, if you kind of build up that reputation of having the latest and the greatest and the nice and the flashy and the shiny, and that's what everybody looks at you to do, but it is financially draining you, would you rather continue to keep up the facade and end up bankrupt? Or would you rather begin to adjust some of that imagery that you're keeping up with or trying to keep up with someone else so that you can sustain that presence for the rest of your life? Just something to think about. But no matter where you are in your life today, if you're sitting there and you're looking at a pile of bills sitting over there to the side, that you know how we do it. We just sit it over because we figure that if we just don't open it, that somehow or another the debt will go away. I mean, I know I'm not the only one. I'm just saying. That was my life. When I became a single mom, I had 3 kids. I was just trying to keep the lights on. They needed food. They kept growing. They needed clothes and shoes. So there are some things that was not a priority for me. And in my struggles, I just kind of piled up a bunch of bills expecting that I'll deal with it later. Well, if you're sitting in that circumstance, or if you're sitting there and you have a lot of money in your bank account, but you realize that you're overspending or you are recklessly spending that money, it is never too late to make small shifts and small changes. You can do that. If you listen to season 1, I talked to you about how during one of my seasons of working, I automatically shifted $50 per paycheck into a credit union account that I did not have access to. I cut up the card and I intentionally didn't try to log in every day or whatever. And after a couple of years, I actually forgot about it, but after a couple of years, when I looked in that account, I had thousands of dollars in an account that was sitting there. I tell you that because I want you to understand how our minds process money. Because it was out of sight and out of mind, I did not create reasons to spend it. When you have it in hand, when you have instant access to it, the human nature is to figure out something to do with it. Well, and especially if you come from an environment where you've struggled with not having money, or you've been hungry, or you've been homeless, or you've had these years or experiences of going without. Oftentimes, even when we make money and make a lot of money, if we do not heal, that hole of lack, we will find ourselves continuing to feel empty and overspend because we haven't solved our past issues. Now, I say all that to say, again, it is never too late. Start to recognize your tendencies. What happens when you get a bonus check or you get an influx of money? What does your urge tell you to do? I've met some 30-year-olds that can retire today and live lavishly for the rest of their life because they were very responsible with their money. But responsibility doesn't mean to go without. And those of us who've been in those limited resources situations, sometimes we get in a panic that we swing the pendulum to one side of the extreme or the other. And if you've grown up with a life of lack, you feel like that not spending or not having something that you really want is just perpetuating a continual life of lack, but it's not. Let's figure out where our priorities are. Let's figure out who we really are, especially in our own world and our own wealth system. Not what anybody else says, not what anybody else wants to see, but you. What makes you feel good? And if spending makes you feel good, then you need to have a plan so that you can sustain the spending habits that you have. Now, saving, investing, credit can also help you expand past a cash environment. As we go through this season, we're going to talk about how do we elevate, how do we maximize, and how do we access some of the avenues and tools and tricks of the trade that some of the wealthiest people use to keep themselves in that tax bracket. Join us next time as we discuss one of the biggest mistakes people make when beginning their careers and how a single decision can help shape your future opportunities. Until next time, remember, success isn't about following someone else's path, or as I say, walking in someone else's shoes. It's about building one that works for you. Thank you for listening to another episode of A Better Way of Earning. I'll see you in the next